Final Fantasy 16 early review, I don't know, pre-review, something like that. Hello everyone here. Today I want to make you a shorter review of FF16 and then eventually, of course, I'll beat in the game, make a long review, right? I think I'll make a lot of streams or whatever, so subscribe and so on. But I was not here, right, to say I'm just really happy, right? Because FF15, right, is probably my least favorite Final Fantasy game. Like, straight up, probably, from the last 20 years or whatever, I don't even know. It always probably is. And 16, it's what I made the video, right? It is so much better. Now, I haven't beaten the game, of course, this is tutorial here, I'm showing you the intro, right? But, of course, I haven't beaten this game, right? But the first hours, the game, of course, is a day, and the first hours is just so much better. The gameplay is so much better, right? So, let's talk about it. So maybe I'm jumping the gun here, right? I'm like, oh, this game is amazing, I haven't beaten the game. But I would say one thing here before we get into the video. You know, I have a wedding this weekend, and then it's like, it's Midsommar and so on. For example, wherever you live as a Swede, you have to celebrate Midsommar. So when I moved from Sweden and I worked at Blizzard, we even had, me and the other Swedes, right? Because a couple of Swedes working there, we had the Midsommarkrans and everything, and did the små grodorna and so on. So you have to do it anyway. So tomorrow is Midsommar, right? And it's a wedding on the so on. So I can't play the game until next week, basically, right? Probably not, or maybe a little bit. But you get my point. So I want to do like a preview. But what I want to say then, right? And this is mostly what it will be about, is the combat, right? Because of course I haven't seen too much of the storyline. You know, I haven't, of course, gotten too many hours into the game yet, but it's a good storyline, right? But there is one thing I would say it's 15 then. I don't think that 15 really had a terrible storyline. The storyline was fine. It had some issues, but it was fine, right? Now, what I really struggle with, because I had image here next to me, is that 15 had terrible combat design, right? That I think is by far the massive biggest issue of FF15, right? I maybe about it before. I streamed the whole 15, right, on my channels. You can links below for that or whatever. And once I like the game, and I don't know, I probably spent 100 hours in the game or whatever, right? So I'm not saying it's the worst game ever, but it's a combat system where was lacking the most, right? And there I feel, of course, at 16, then, right? Talking about the review here, this like pre-review, we call it, the first early review, we call it, yeah. It's so much better, right? 16's combat system, as people call it, Devil May Cry, whatever, action based, but they have similarities, right? You're teleporting around a bit with the character here as well, right? You have kind of the same kind of and so on. So there is some similarity to it, but 15 for me felt many aspects. First of all, very wishy-washy, right? Where Noctis just kind of goes around like that, nothing really happens, so on. But even more so, right? The biggest with 15, I would say, is that a complete lack of challenge, right? I don't think I died a single time at all playing 15. Again, I streamed most of it, and you can look at the channel and also my Twitch channel. I think I streamed like almost the whole game, or almost every dungeon. And I don't think I died. I think I like won something. I can't barely remember ever dying in 15. And that's even including finding the secret clock tower dungeon way too low level, doing it in the wrong order, so I had to fight every extra boss or whatever you call it 3 times, and then still beating that Earth Dragon, whatever it is, in the end, while being massively under level, right? Because the game has this really weird system where you can always use potions to hit people, you need to feed this out, whatever, right? So, long story short, basically, right? I hated the combat system, right? I liked the storyline, again, was fine. Liked the world, that was fine. The exploration, that was fine, so on, right? Liked the fishing, that's a good mini game, so on. But of course, then, yeah, the combat system was dreadful, right? So let's talk about 16 then, and the good stuff. At 16, kind of like the bit of a Square Enix return to form, right? First of all, so I begin the video, right? You have this other kind of gameplay too, right? So for example, if I start playing again here, this is the beginning of the game, and you have this like, I'll say it, you're shooting balls or whatever. But I just want to put it out, right, that the game has this too, and I mean, that's fine, right? We've seen other games too, FF13 a little bit and so on. The game also has hit them events and so on. So I think that's just fine, right? It doesn't make the game amazingly better that you have like a little bit of other cutesy gameplay or whatever. But, you know, it still adds a little bit to it, right? Even though I find them almost tedious, it's like Kadyu fighting battles or whatever. But it kind of reminds me of like betetr 3, I guess. Yeah, betetr 3 also had this like Kadyu fighting battles, and they were like fun the first time because it's something different than they almost get tedious. They aren't amazing, honestly. They aren't amazing. But I think like in most games, right, where you have the main combat system, and then you have these alternative systems, right? If you look at an old game, like for example Contra or Super Protectors called in Europe, where you have the classic 2D action game, right? You run with the shooting and so on, and then you have the weird over-the-top game where you have to run around and get like 5 enemies in circles and so on. Those kind of gameplay is really fun, right? Because you have the normal gameplay, right? And you suddenly have some weird side gameplay with weird angles and so on, kind of like same with this thing. And then you go back to normal gameplay, right? So this is refreshing, and 15 didn't have that at all. So it's better, I think, in that sense. But let's talk about the real combat system. So 16 is probably heard, right, has a much more of a real-time fight system. Right? This is what I want to really focus a bit here. I don't want to shit on 15. I want to be negative about 15. I'm still salty over 15 like 6-7 years ago later, right? But mostly, yeah, this combat system is much better. As I mentioned earlier, it is similar. You have teleporting. Of course, 15 also was real-time. You're running around and so on, right? But the combat here is much better. It feels more heavy. I think one thing I see immediately is that you're hitting something, right? Even if you're teleporting around, you're hitting an enemy, whatever enemy it is, it feels more, I feel, more weight to it, right? It feels, the damage is there. It feels more like I'm punching this enemy. Something like that. I hope it makes any sense. But example, it's an enemy called Gleipnir, okay? Not the best enemy ever, but the first real fighting Gleipnir, I think that's one of the best enemy fights ever done in a way, in a kind of short, like a one episode fight, because every punch they do really feels, the punch someone, you see the skin like moving and vibrating. It feels like there's weight behind the punch in this weird way they usually fight on have, right? So there's something where I think 16 massively succeed over 15, where I feel that even if you have a similar teleporting sword guy, because it's like, anime-ish gaming, right? We gotta have the hair and gotta have a big katana, whatever. It still feels like in 16 with climbing that it really has a lot more weight. So that's the first thing, right? My pet piece, it always combat side, right? Because I work a lot with combat mostly in games. But it's okay, it feels better. It feels more immersive, whatever. But even most important, right? It is again then not, super easy, or it's much harder. I wouldn't say that like 16 is the hardest game ever, even though it is definitely harder than 15. But it's more that 15 was just absurdly easy. This is something like that, yeah. And I don't want the media sitting too much on 15, but it just feels like 16 it has like let me say this right. Obviously, I've played like every Final Fantasy, right? Many times. But 13, I still think has the best combat system. 13 has a beautiful combat system, right? The paradigm shift and the fights are pretty hard. Yeah, 13 probably has the hardest main storyline of all the fantasy games, where you actually have to struggle against some normal enemies or bosses or whatever that are not like side bosses, right? You have to have the correcting and change and so on, and actually it's pretty challenging in some parts. It's not the hardest game ever, right? It's harder playing like a PvP game or whatever, but it's somewhat hard. And then 15, of course, is absurdly easy, right? And I think that this game is probably somewhere in the middle, if that makes any sense, right? Like it's not, again, obviously it's super easy as 15, I mean, but it's not as hard as 13, right? And I feel it hits like a really good stride then, right? Because I think honestly the 13 is probably too hard for that like casual fan base. I mean, I am a huge Final Fantasy fan, but let's be honest here, salt again here, but Final Fantasy is the biggest ARPG, right? It is still for the casual audience, right? So I would say 13 is probably too hard, honestly, yeah, for like the average player. Probably, where 15 is too easy for everyone, in my opinion. But I actually think that even the casual player complained about 15 as being like, oh, I can never die, I press the button, or whatever. Yeah, it feels very weird in that sense. It also feels that 15 lacked a lot of purpose. Man, I'm massive. No, but this game here, even though it obviously also is a little bit, you can do this stuff and so on, it has gone back more to a linearity, right? A lot of people hate that with 13, oh, it's so linear, whatever. But I liked it a lot more, right? 16 is much more linear. It's not 100% only running on a corridor, but I absolutely prefer that, of course, as well. It also makes 16 better, I think, also back to form. Because, let's be honest here, Square Enix are much better at producing linear games, right? A linear storyline, linear games, typical JRPG. That's what they're known for, right? Not saying that they haven't made other games that are not linear, that are good, but most of the good Square Enix games are linear, right? That's what they succeed in. Trying to make the open world stuff, not really their forte, I would say, right? They're also better 16. Again, then back to form, a little more classic. And the thing is that, just point out, right? I always liked how FF7, whatever, 8, whatever, right? Yes, they're linear. Then, of course, end game, right? You have secret island, secret bosses, chocobo racing and breeding and stuff, right? So I think it's very important to understand, honestly, right, that because a lot of people complain about the linearity of fantasy, but the strength of them is that the storyline is linear, right? So you get a good storyline, the pacing is linear, so you get a good pacing, storyline, combat, and so on. But then eventually, when the world opens up, right, you get many different side quests and different bosses, and they're really hard, or whatever, and that's a huge fun part of games. That is really is, I would say, that the JRPG formula. Now, of course, it's an early review. I haven't gone that far yet in 16. I'm clearly not in the end game of 16 yet. I haven't played the game for the many hours, right? I'm only played it for like what, 5, 6 hours, 7. Even I haven't played it for X hours now, obviously, making this early review. But it does feel to me that it's again that back to form, following that classic formula of like, okay, it's more line in the beginning, a little bit side stuff, but it's mostly this, right? And then we're getting into probably a bigger thing, more bosses later on and so on. Right? Maybe hopefully, but still, with 15 was just kind of like, oh, you have a car, and it's like it's go wherever you want, right? Yeah, kind of like a Breath of the Wild feel to it, or Elderly, go wherever you want, and it just didn't work at all, I think. Yeah, it just didn't work, right? But I think that it's not necessarily, just to point out, that's not because of the combat system, right? There are two issues, I guess, in 15. It is the open world and the combat system, yeah, because they're exclusively two different issues. They're not like a combination of them. I mean, certainly it doesn't get better because it's like that. Because as I explained, when I played 15, I managed to find the hardest dungeon very early, and I still beat it. So I guess it is a combination. But yeah, it's like a combining of them is also bad. But no, but I think 16 is a lot better at that. And then this is obviously to be a spoiler-free review here, right? Early spoiler-free review. The storyline is dark and grim and so on. But honestly, I'll say this thing here, not to shit on the game itself, but I think that people are overplaying that, okay? Maybe that's saying I say this because I don't want to spoil, you know. But yes, you probably played the demo. Demo was great and so on, right? People really love the demo. I love it too. And it has a very dark ending and so on. Absolutely. But I don't think that the game actually is that super mature, dark, or whatever. I mean, it is, but I don't think it's more than the previous ones. So there's a weird point to make, but my point is that, yes, the game is mature, right? The game is dark. If you like dark game, I recommend this game absolutely. Much better combat system, better challenge, and probably a better story than 15. But I haven't beaten the game yet fully, but you know, probably a better story. But all that being said, I still think it's true to say though, right? That, you know, I have played every FF game, and they all have really dark backstory. They all have dark stories. They all have this, like, you know, really morbid thing and all that stuff, right? And it's mostly that this game has, I guess, like foul language, to say the F word or whatever. It's more gory, I guess. So it's like visually, it is superficially, I suppose, more mature or whatever. But the storyline is dark. I mean, again, it's dark. But have you played FF2 had a really dark storyline too, man. FF4 when they're doing the stone thing, that's dark. And you know, so there's always been many dark moments, right, in Final Fantasy. As a side note, in the video here, I talked about some guys earlier this week, where they were saying they were so excited to play the demo. Oh, it's so dark and all so that. But I have to say that the darkest game I ever played from Square Enix, which actually is a quest game, but today it's a Swedish game, is Tetris Ogre, right? Like the actual Ogre games. Yeah, those games are so dark, man. So I have a spoiler here then. I can't even say the words on YouTube or whatever. But there is a woman in Tetris Ogre that gets gang-ard, you know. She gets a lot of men, so to speak, forced into that. And then she, you know, deletes herself, yeah, after that. That's a scene in Tetris Ogre, yeah. And that's a story for Tetris Ogre. And this woman is a playable character, she's an NPC. She's a playable character, but basically in the game, if you don't recruit her, she gets hard and then she jumps off like a cliff thing. But if you you know, recruit her, she will not do that. So, and recruiting her is depending on how you play the game, right? So yeah, so I have seen them. You know, this is like in '96, I think the game is released. Yeah, that's Ogre. '96, right? Same artist that worked on FF12, right? And worked on that game and so on, and same writers, most of them. So it is like. It's nothing new, I would say, right? That Square Enix has really dark games, or Enix or Square, whatever. It is probably more than the graphics now then. Obviously on PS5 the graphics are great, right, and so on. And, you know, they also have, I guess, less censored language, I suppose, as I mentioned. But I won't say it's bad, okay? I mean, I like it, but I think it's enough fun that having played the game for a bit, I mean, yeah, it's a great storyline, and it's dark and so on, but it's not like necessarily super much darker than some of the older games. But sure, when the games for the like the PlayStation 1 games or the SNES games or whatever, right? Yeah, they had the same storylines or same, but I mean, in the same maturity level actually. But of course, with their graphics, no one cared. No one was like 18 plus in those games, right? But I think that if you actually had like one of those old SNES games in these kind of graphic for 16, they would also probably be seen as very, very dark. Of course, depending on if you show those scenes or not, right? Yeah, depending on if you fully animate some of the death scenes and so on. Yeah, they also be very, very dark. But anyway, guys, in conclusion, right? 16 is back to form for me. I am a little bit early here, as I mentioned in the video, right? I can't play the game probably more than used today this week, right? Unfortunately, it never is a struggle. I'm just like, no, but I want to play the game. But yeah, I have this wedding so on, right? So I will play for a few more hours before the wedding and so on. You know how it is. Basically, I'm just like, I'm gonna play as much as I can, right? But I want to sort this early review out here because I think some people, in my opinion, right, are a lot of the demo really made a lot of people happy about the game or inspired, hyped by the game. But I still genuinely think that a lot of people were like me, where I still had high hopes for the game, right? Because I do love this franchise and I love most of the game, right? That Square Enix has produced over many, many years. So you have a little bit of a, how to say it, threshold. Even if I disliked 15 in a lot of ways, you have a threshold to be like, yeah, I'm still gonna buy the game, you know. But if this game had sucked too in that sense, if this game was as bad as 15, again, 15 isn't the worst game ever, but for me it's the weakest, you know, game, right, FF game, I think, ever. And if this game was equally bad as 15, then I probably would be, you know, incredibly, like, I'll say it, 17, you know, like 5 years from now, I'd be like, I probably would have wanted to be a little bit like, maybe I'm quitting this franchise, right? And I probably would only buy the specific, you know, games, right? So I don't know, I just want to point it out. I mean, I know people are already hyped up now because everyone loved the demo set, but I really want to, as a person, right, that was very, very, as to speak, that hated 15, right, in strong words. Yeah, have a very strong dislike for 15. This game so far is really good, but I think again the core thing that comes back to me, right, is the combat, right? Yeah. I sound like a broken record, but it's the combat, right? Because, like I said, I played all these games, right? I think 13 still has the best combat, as I mentioned, both challenge and hard. Actually, probably 13 too. So you have the breeding too, so it's like Pokemon with 13, whatever you want to compare it to. That is probably the best combat system they ever made, actually. 13 2 of all the FF games. FF7 Remake also has a really good combat system. As well, right? So I have high hopes for Rebirth, but I think that 13.2 is probably actually the best one. Generally, yeah, that's probably the the perfect fun they ever made. But yeah, I think that's probably my main thing, right? And okay, one last thing I say, don't forget, I don't get people complaining about it though. People complaining and saying, "Oh, it's not turn-based anymore." It hasn't been turn-based in like 20 years, man. Like Fantasy has always changed its combat system, right, between every game, except like 4, 5, and 6, basically. But they have other mechanics, but even back on Super Nintendo, right, they have what's called ATB system, right, active time battle system, and they were never really like true turn-based. You had your time meter and stuff, right? They were never really like turn-based games. The only really like big FF game that is turn-based, right, is of course FF10, right? Yes, you have tactics, right? You have Tets Advanced, you have Revenant Wings, you have the other like spin-offs. But for the main games, FF10 is the only one that is truly turn-based, right? All the other games since like FF3 or something are true turn-based, and even 4, 5, 6 are kind of mid pseudo turn-based or whatever, right? And then again, like 12, 13, right? 12 you move around real time, right? That's the first game you had free roaming movement in real time. You had like a time meter, but still it was definitely real time. And 13 you couldn't move around anymore, but you had very much active battle, right? So on. So yeah, that complaint to me is kind of funny because I get people love turn RPGs. I'm too, right? I like Persona, right? I like Yakuza, whatever. So other new games, games. I love Octopath Traveler too, right? One of the best games this year, right? That's kind of active turn. But yeah, point. No, so I like those games, right? Whatever. But Final Fantasy hasn't really been turn-based since FF10, and FF10 wasn't even following another turn-based game, right? So I think it's weird. But anyway, this game here, I think the issue is more that the 15 was this, willy-nilly. It lost its feeling. It didn't feel like a good fight because not because teleports around all the time, and you do damage, and it was too easy, and I feel that's probably 15. And yeah, 15 is also real time, and the fights were bad. It didn't feel like a good fight. Nothing gave you a challenge, and it was just like you fight the biggest boss in the game, and you're like, oh, he died immediately. It just felt weird. Like it didn't feel like anything had any weight to it. The only thing I liked in 15, if I had positive then, is when the character did this like bro stuff, you know, like they help you up, you fall down, and then the AI kind of like brings you up, or they're like, yeah, bro, and that was cool in 15. Yeah, they had like interactions with the characters during the fight. That was cool in 15, but from an actual like combo system, or whatever, it was. I think it was the worst system they ever had probably. So this game has, and this might be the best, you know. I haven't gone far enough, I feel, in 16 to value that. Because I'm not gonna say this has the best combat system until I've beaten all the bosses, right? You know what I mean? Until I've beaten the harder bosses in the game. Because you really have to measure it until the secret bosses or whatever, right? But it feels like a really good combat system, right? And yeah, challenge factor probably somewhere between, I guess. Yeah, challenge factor is still probably lower than 13 and so on. I mean, 13 is hard, man. I'm not saying again like it's hard as like playing, you know, whatever, StarCraft or whatever, right? But it's hard that you have to constantly change your shifts, and how you spec different character is actually really important as well in that game. Yeah, weirdly important. And then you get stuck also, you have to use death magic usually to get the best loot and so on. It's really weird, but very grindy. It's very grindy actually with that Mantios, which of course is the thing in most Fantasy games. But I hope you enjoyed the review and so on. I'll see you guys with more of this game next week, I guess. Yeah, I'll take a wedding break then, right? Well, I mean, I will play. I mean, obviously, I'm gonna play more after this video here, right? But I'm not gonna have time to like set up a stream and all this stuff. Maybe a little bit, but thing is that, I'll say it as a side note, I always feel like that's way with streaming. You know what I mean? Like I like streaming and so on, but it's so much easier sometimes to just not stream. It sounds like a weird thing. I mean, obviously, but what I mean is that because now I have stuff to do, right? Oh, I need to do this thing, I need to do that thing, right? And like, well, the reason I haven't streamed now is because I have to prepare for this wedding, right? With stuff and so on. Maybe I can play for 30 minutes, right? And then I can play 30 minutes, and then I have to do something else 30 minutes, and I can play again, right? So it's easier to just play the game, you know what I mean, and then go away 30 minutes and go back. Because if you stream, you feel you need a dedicated like 2-3 hours, I feel, to sit down and be okay, let's play the game. Like yesterday we streamed the first part, not okay, I have like 3 hours now, like it's late evenings, play the game, right? That's what I feel like. I don't know, it's a side note, but that's the thing I would say when it comes to streaming, right? I always felt that you need to have like a time slot, like okay, I can't be interrupted, because now people are calling me, this thing's happening, so lots of happenings at time, I need to do this thing, I need to pack that stuff, I need to do that stuff, so I don't know, it's a side note, but if some people are like, why aren't you streaming or whatever, so I felt I would do this video here instead, right, to kind of give you my first impression reviews, my first feelings here, right, before I keep playing, because I'm gonna play the game more than off stream, right, because I mean I wanna see the game, but I also wanna play that, right, but I probably actually will go back and next week I think I'm gonna stream after the demo ends anyway, so we kind of have like part 2 is gonna be the thing anyway. I was thinking whatever, that's the point of the video. But anyway, please subscribe guys, press the like button, and have a great day.